bypassed in the process by the government concerned, like in the Trondheim case. And the government of Norway had nothing to do with Trondheim, in a sense that it did not select the Norwegian competitor instead of the more efficient American. Nonetheless, it had to face the music, so to speak, to defend the action against Norway as the contracting party to the GPA for the failure of Trondheim to comply with the rules. And it's not the company, it's of course the company.
But in this second way, we can, the bidder can benefit only from limited recourse, only
yes.
by retaliation for the
like Mr. Chiquita, if he's lucky enough to come up trumps or important enough as an industry, as a whole, like if the car industry were to, as a whole, complain about access restrictions in whatever, Korea or somewhere else. But the same is true in other procedures as well, anti-dumping. It's not just one company that complains about competition from, say, Japanese cars or consumer electronics, it's the whole industry. It's required under the rules. And if they can persuade, say, in the case of the European Union, the Commission, that dumping has occurred, they might, don't have to, initiate proceedings against a foreign unfair competitor accused of dumping. Yeah? But it's not...
More questions? No? Okay, so...
Why are there not more questions? I'd like people to comment on this habit of thinking that money should go to our people.
Yes.
Our people.
Yes.
We like the right to discriminate, don't we?
Because really this is absolutely the document. It's documented to 1.5 months ago, and we have
Too fresh.
Yes, yes. It's
Still an open wound.
Fresh to discuss. But anyway, when we prepared the applicant for grant for the seminar, we didn't know it. We couldn't expect, but by the date of seminar, it would be absolutely new version of this document. And so it's something interesting. While when you're preparing the seminar about something, the situation of the objects of your seminar is changed a lot. So, Friedel, your final words?
My final words. Well, much of what we talk here in terms of rules and how they're implemented and policed, monitored, sanctioned, enforced, has much to do with governmental habits or culture or governance, culture or traditional way of doing things. So when one talks about this being a new approach to governmental behavior when it comes to supplying themselves with goods and services, what one really says is, well, it makes sense in economic terms, but our subconscious habit of thinking dispenses with economic rationality. People who think or feel patriotically in favor of domestic products, they don't care about economics. They don't know, or even if they knew, they wouldn't care. And that is the whole problem in all these rules. We're talking about best scientific practice. Well, we don't have much science in economics, except in very few rather primitive contexts, such as this. If we agree, and I think very few people dissent from the proposition, that competition within a framework of rules promotes economic efficiency, then one should adjust the rules accordingly. If we have our doubts, and if we think there are other values equally strong or stronger than economic efficiency, well, then you go on giving out contracts in the beer bar to your friend, your drinking mate, the one who supports the same club as you.
Friendship is important.
Friendship is something important. Okay. That are the issues ultimately, really. So one must not be, and I'm certainly not mesmerized by the rules. But if we talk about good governance, and if we further believe that there is something to it, not just a slogan, but possibly can be made to be implemented as real practice, then we have to adjust the behavior, not drop the rules. I would suggest. But I know it's a very difficult thing to change practice. We are going on in Austria still today to say that our government is still following the rules of Maria Theresia 200 years ago. Meaning heavy bureaucratic, slow, unfriendly, treating the citizen as a subject rather than a citizen, etc., etc. Well, there is a point, no doubt. One cannot generalize, but what we're saying is there is governmental culture. You can also see it in another area, transparency, we've already talked about it. The rules of the WTO really, or the GATT originally, are all about preventing governments repeating the same mistakes behind closed doors again, the mistakes they made in the 30s responding to the Depression. Protectionism, which caused all the damage. If you make things open, if you allow others to see what's going on, if you discourage secret alliances bilaterally, we make multilateral non-discriminatory trade a habit, you have made sure that governments don't repeat the same mistake. If you think it doesn't matter, we're going back to the original philosophy. I put it out with 21st century Europe. The young people forget because they don't know.
Professor.
Actually, let me just finish this.
Yes.
I don't know in Russia and Ukraine. In Europe, there are now secondary schools, I know, where the subject of history has been dropped. There is no history. No local, no national, no European, nor any. Not even of the planet with 3.5 billion years. Okay? Now, that being what it is, I think, not unimportant to remind ourselves why we have these institutions and these rules. They are there for a reason. If you discard the reason as irrelevant, if you think one can go on as before, and why not, we are all friends now, you may invite a repetition of history. Mistakes can be repeated, are being repeated. And I always stress the connection which is there between failed economic policy and political radicalization, wherever, in one direction or the other. And I mentioned a few names. I could have amplified a number of names, from Mussolini to Pilsudski to Horvat, etc., etc. All trying to do the same thing. Making the masses happy, giving them employment by building roads for tanks and not for manufacturing units. Do you agree?
No.
No.
You said a nice thing. I can't